Now let's get into economy picking. Now, economy picking is a bit different than alternate picking and tremolo picking, obviously, but it comes down to being more economical with your movements when it comes to your picking hand. So for example, in alternate picking and tremolo picking, it's just down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, or that very fast, right? So that at varying speeds, basically. Economy picking is a bit different. It's a way to approach different types of lead runs, licks, solos, whatever you want to call it, with an approach that's a little bit more again, economical, right? As far as like not just doing the simple down, up, down, up, down, up the whole time, but in a way that actually makes it a little bit more effective, you could say, as far as like navigating the fretboard in a different way or going across the strings in a different way. Now, that's not to say that economy picking is superior to alternate picking or tremolo picking, not at all. In fact, all of these techniques, I'm talking about these in these videos for a reason, because they're all relevant, they're all important, and you want to have all of them in your stable. So I'm going to go over what I personally like to do with economy picking, like what situations do I find it the most relevant, and how it actually differs if I were to go through the same situation but apply it with like alternate picking. Because you can, it's not like economy picking solves a problem that alternate picking can't. But it's more of just a different way to go about it, but you do get a different result. There actually is a different sound you get with economy picking that I think is great, and actually definitely, has a place, and it can be something that, depending on the situation, can even be preferable to alternate picking. So let's say, for example, like a little bit like what I did in the beginning of the video, right? I just took this little sort of A minor pentatonic sort of neighborhood, throwing that flat 5 in there, so A minor blues pentatonic kind of deal. I was taking this sort of thing, which is 7-5, and then on G, and then 7-5 on D, and then 8-5 on G, and repeating that. So like 7-5, 7-5, 8-5, 7-5. So that's a perfect example of the type of lick that we could approach with both alternate picking and economy picking. And let's kind of see the different sounds that we get. So if I were to straight up alternate pick this, right? Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. I can do that, right? That can work. Personally, I feel like economy picking will be a little bit easier, where instead of going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, right? We're going down, up, down. So what's happening here is a little bit more of a decisive movement. We're going down, up, down. So take a look at this as far as what my picking hand is doing. As I do that downstroke, then that upstroke, then as I move up to the next string, it's followed up with another upstroke. That's essentially the hallmark of economy picking, is when you have the same directional pick stroke going across two strings. So in this case, we have an upstroke happening twice, right? So we have down, up, down, down, up, down, as opposed to down, up, up. And dig this, when we're going down, up, down, it's much less movement than going down, up, because we're doing this alternate picking motion as we're traveling across strings. It is going to require more movement from our hands. Not much, but it definitely does require more movement as opposed to. Now, it may sound exactly the same to you, which I totally understand why it would, but as we examine it further, we'll kind of see how this economical approach to picking can actually give us a pretty cool percussive kind of sound. So, like, especially when you're playing faster, when you're playing economy picking a little bit increased tempo, right? So as opposed to just like, by the way, it's just the same series of pick strokes. Down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. So just work through that slowly with me, right? Down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, right? But if we were to play this faster, right? I'm just gonna skip ahead to playing it like at a much faster tempo. There's a pretty percussive kind of sound that if I were to play it at that same tempo with alternate picking, Now granted, my alternate picking is not perfect, right? In fact, none of my techniques are perfect. This is just me imparting to you like knowledge that I've built over the years that I am continuing to put myself through, because the learning will never stop. You're never going to reach a point where you just know everything and you're perfect at everything, right? And I certainly am very far from there, right? I'm always going to be a student as far as I'm concerned. So everything that I'm showing you, this is all like I'm preaching to myself as well, right? So that kind of sound, especially if I palm mute it just a little bit, it gets that really cool like percussive kind of sound. But if I alternate pick it, it's not that it's not percussive, but it's, I don't know, it's busier, less economical, you could say, right? But I think the economy picking really helps with that percussion, right? And it's very reminiscent of like a lot of the virtuosos from like the 80s, like Paul Gilbert, for example, in his Racer X days. I mean, economy picking is a huge part of the way that he plays. And he has this very identifiable, amazing kind of pick attack that really sets him apart, and it comes down to economy picking. So he does have a very percussive way that he'll like just blaze up a scale pattern, right? Which, let's get to that. You know, when we're talking about economy picking, the use of economy picking, it actually works great when you're dealing with odd numbers of notes per string. So when you're dealing with even numbers, alternate picking makes sense, because then you have two movements in order to make up alternate picking, down, up. And then if you're repeating that, you have even numbers. It's a much easier, steady flow as far as traveling across the strings. But if you're dealing with, let's say, a 3-note per string pattern, which I don't play as often anymore. I'm more of a cage system guy, although, you know, I'm not going to get into that whole debate. I think both systems are great. Both systems have value and they have purpose, and it all comes down to individual situations. My personal individual situations tend to be more, the cage system tends to be more relevant for that as opposed to the 3-note per string system. But 3-note per string system is absolutely awesome. I advocate for it just as much. You know, so if we're dealing with a 3-note per string scale pattern, right? Let's say right here, like doing an A minor kind of thing. So right here, it's 8, 10, 12 on low E, and 8, 10, 12 on A. And then we have 9, 10, 12 on D, 9, 10, 12 on G. Then we have 10, 12, 13 on B, 10, 12, 13 on high E. So we essentially have 3 patterns that are doubled. So we have this pattern twice, then this pattern twice, then this pattern twice. A lot easier to remember, right? So if we're going to be climbing up that scale in a way that's not alternate picking, if we're doing economy picking, we would be going down, up, down, 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 down, up, down. So we have a downstroke, 2 downstrokes in a row. Down, up, down, down. So as soon as we get to the last note on one string, moving on to the next note, since we're dealing with odd numbers, 3, right? Down, up, down, down. We're starting it with a downstroke to the next string, then up, down, down to the next string, up, down, down to the next string. So are you seeing just the pattern? It's just the pattern repeated multiple times. So once you wrap your head around just one go of the pattern, you can just multiply it, right, and essentially walk it through the whole thing. So if you're doing this type of a scale pattern, a 3-note per string, and since I'm keeping that palm muting kind of percussive sound, it just sounds cool. If I were to alternate pick it, right, I definitely cannot do it nearly as fast alternate picking with 3-note per string runs as I could with economy picking. You know, I don't really shred as much as I used to. I've lost a lot of those chops, but there you go. Especially like, you know, growing up when I used to listen to guitar players who could just like climb up a scale and then just keep that, it just sounds like they were able to go, they would go into a bend, you know, and it was like, there was just this smooth, like just series of notes that every note just hit really hard. It all comes down to that economy picking sound, right? That percussive sound, so that each note has like an impact, has like a thump to it. And it almost sounds like you're alternate picking the whole way through, but it really is just economy picking. Now, if we were to take this same scale pattern and descend with it, let's take a look at what we would do for economy picking, right? We're still doing 3 notes per string, same exact patterns. Instead of starting from the low E, coming up to the high E, we've now changed from going from the high E down to the low E. So we'd be going. So the picking pattern is up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So when we ascended, we went down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down. So there were 2 downstrokes in a row. And as we move up, we're doing 2 upstrokes in a row. But you do want to start with an upstroke for your first note. So you have up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And if you're doing an ascending to descending thing, you know, right? That's just kind of how the whole pattern works out. As you're ascending, you're doing 2 downstrokes in a row, and as you're descending, you're doing 2 upstrokes in a row, which logically makes sense. So I'm hoping that despite the fact that I no longer have the chops I did in my 20s to be able to do this kind of stuff, all those techniques obviously still linger, and I do use them in very sparsely, you know, in what I do for a living anyway. It's not very common I get to employ those techniques, but they are very important. And of course, with everything that I've learned and with how much it has served me over the years, I'm very happy to impart that same thing to you. But what is more relevant with what I do these days is more the 2 note per string ascending pentatonic runs, you know, like that kind of stuff. So how we apply economy picking here would actually be a good starting point, similar to what we did earlier with that, right? So if it's the same basic idea where we're starting on the upper note, right? And what I'm doing is down, up, down. Because we're doing 2 notes per string, not 3, makes it a little bit easier to wrap your head around, you know? So if we're doing 8, 5, 8, 5 on high E and B, right? Minor pentatonic. So we're doing down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. And if you palm mute it to really focus on that percussive sound. Now, going back to what we talked about with tremolo picking, right? The faster you want to play it, the lighter your grip on the pick. This applies to economy picking as well. You know, the lighter you pick, it just gets a little bit cleaner. You know, so once you get that pattern down, it's the same pattern, just ascending up, you know, you just move up the minor pentatonic scale in those 2 note per string blocks there, right? You know, and a good place to start would be like right here, right, in this position. So you have 8, 5, 8, 5, and then you can move up to 10, 8, 10, 8, and then there's 12, 10, 13, 10. Then we get to 15, 12, 15, 13, which, you know, when you're dealing with these kind of a little more offset 2 note per string, like it's easier when it's the same finger pattern on both strings, but just keep that in mind. Sometimes I even trip up on that, as you heard earlier. You know, because you're still trying to do it rapidly, you know, but you're doing this kind of, it feels a little bit awkward, you know. So that's why I tend to just glide through those, you know. If I get to one that's just 2 similar finger patterns on both strings, then I'll stay on them more, you know. Of course, you don't always have to be fretting notes. You can just mute your strings and do it, which actually is a great place to start if this is a brand new technique to you. So you can mute your strings, and going back to what we did earlier, where we were playing between the G and the D strings, right? So here's what's happening. We're going down, up, down, down, up, down. You can hear the percussion, right? Especially since they're muted. It's almost like you're creating a beat. You know, not doing it in sync, but you get the idea, right? So we're doing as just a way of getting used to that movement. And again, remember, the faster you go, the looser you want to pick.